Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. Today, I'm going to share with you how I make insulin my bitch. Now, before anyone gets offended by that statement, which also happens to be the title of the episode, so you got this far, you're probably not too offended. But let me explain. It's actually part of a conversation that came up. It just means that I'm in control, or that I manage when it's released, when insulin is released in my body, and I use it to my benefit. And then when I don't need it, I send it away, essentially. But that's too long to fit in a title. So you kind of got the idea. But it actually was the feedback I received when I described what I'm about to explain to you. And I approached it with fasting and workouts and refeeding after the workout to a friend of mine who also happens to be an MD, Dr. Aaron Wenzel. He wrote the foreword to my first book. And before he has a concierge medical practice now, but before he was in concierge medical, he also had a non-surgical weight loss clinic. So he's very familiar with the way insulin and metabolic health, how those play together in the body. He's very familiar with the hormonal processes. So that was his response when I told him about my approach, my technique. He said, he was kind of thinking about it. He said, "You made insulin your bitch." And I'm like, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a great way of putting it. It kind of sums it up pretty quickly. And it's not difficult to understand by any stretch, but it just demonstrates, I believe, that insulin doesn't have to be your enemy. It can serve you. It's meant to serve you in a healthy environment. It can help you recover from workouts, maintain muscle, grow muscle. I mean, insulin delivers glucose and protein to our muscles, as well as other organs, important organs, right? So if you're currently trying to reverse insulin resistance or aggressively lose weight, this approach is not for you right now. Okay, just put it on hold, put it back burner. This is meant to be used in an insulin sensitive environment with an intense workout plan. Okay, with the goal being improved metabolic flexibility or metabolic switching. You know, everyone says, "I want that. I have that goal. I want that goal." Yes, but you don't want to play with insulin if you're dealing with some insulin resistance or aggressively trying to lose 20 pounds or more. This is really playing with insulin when you can really turn it on and turn it off, and you're not just trying to reduce chronic levels. This would not be the way to do it. Just so you understand, disclaimer here: if you're dealing with chronic elevated insulin levels or blood sugar levels, don't do this. This is not you're not there yet. You can get there. You're not there yet. Don't play with it. Try to reduce as much as you can until you get to where you need to be. But I've included links to 2 different studies in the show notes regarding the benefits of fasting or exercise, or fasting with exercise in a fasted state, basically, for brain health, neuroplasticity, metabolic switching, cardiovascular health, disease resistance, stress resistance, reduced inflammation, general longevity. In other words, it's beneficial on a number of levels. It's not just about weight loss, really. And both of those studies were done by Mark Mattson, who has led the charge on the benefits of fasting for over a decade. He's been my go-to. The first person I saw doing studies on fasting 10 years ago. But working out in fasted states is nothing new, although very few people do it regularly because it does impede performance during the workout. But I'm not looking for performance during the workout. I'm looking for improved metabolic flexibility and all those other benefits I mentioned. But to be clear, by fasted, I mean at least 12 hours without food prior to the workout. It's usually longer. For me, it's been 14 or 16 hours before I work out. But my goal is improved metabolic flexibility. So meaning my body's ability to switch back and forth between glycogen and fat depending on what's available at an intense level with the workout, right? So fat or ketones, right? Ketones being shaved off pieces of fat that we can burn, but I can switch when needed. The workout provides an intense demand for energy, far more than my day-to-day routine. So by working out in that fasted state, it makes my day-to-day routine that much easier to accomplish in a fasted state without feeling hunger or like I'm low on energy, because my body is able to switch and accommodate my general routine very easily with just burning fat, right? As long as I stay hydrated, that's probably the biggest hurdle when you're fasted, is keeping electrolytes where they should be. And yes, I do fatigue faster or sooner during a workout when fasted than if I had eaten a few hours before. That's the point, though. I want more fatigue, and I want to work through that fatigue. I want my workout to be intense as I can manage it in the fatigue state. I want to increase fatigue. I want to increase lactic acid levels and to feel that lactate rise in my body, meaning that I'm going to feel some dizziness. I might even get on the edge of some nausea. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm really pushing it today. I know that sounds weird, but I'm knowing that my body will adapt and will eventually convert some lactate to fuel, well, some of it, but I'll get used to it. I'll develop more endurance and better able to use fat for fuel at an intense level. But I do like working right up to that edge where I feel that dizziness, right? And then, look over it, keeping the pace of my workout as high as I can, come right up to that envelope. I've even taken clients to that level, not always on purpose, where I'm like sending them to the bathroom to lose their cookies. That's not the goal by any stretch. But it happens because as we're learning where that envelope is, and they're learning how far they can push, it happens as they're adapting to it. Not the goal, but I do like if people will allow me, taking my clients up to that level where they're feeling it through circuits, through moving them without much rest, through intense exercise. And I'm usually doing either a full body circuit or supersets of intense exercise, like squats, presses, pull-ups, rows, planks, all sorts of other core stuff, compound movements generally, back to back with as little rest as possible. So if it's all upper body one day and then lower body core the other, then I might push, back and forth between pushing presses and rows, or presses and pull-ups, a set of one, set of the other, set of one, set of the back and forth, or lower body core like legs, and then an ab set, and then a leg set, and then an ab set. While one's working, the other one's resting. And I'll work in rest pause sets and drop sets. So that set's a little bit longer, allowing more rest for the other work, other muscle group, you could say, but really pushing into that fatigue as safely as possible. And I'll do the same with full body circuits, a push, a pull, a legs, core, rotating set to set, rotating through those. If you got a bar on your back, or for squats, or bar over your chest, some kind of press, that's a little more risky than if you're using bands or body weight or dumbbells, right? You can't dump the weight as easily and you can get stuck. So you have to, that's going to limit the level of fatigue you can get to on those exercises. I still include those, but I like to, then I shift into exercises towards the end that I can really take to the point of fatigue that I can't move. I mean, I'm doing partial reps because I can't finish the full range because of the fatigue level. And I keep doing several of those until I just can't move it. Can't move the band. Can't do another push-up or another hip thrust, single leg hip thrust. So as close to complete fatigue as possible before moving on to the exercise, and I mean as possible, including as safely as possible, when it makes sense for you to do that. But short, intense workouts. If I'm doing 4 workouts a week that are split, like the upper body and then the lower body core on the other day, they might be much shorter, 25, 35 minutes, and just nail them, get them done, move on. If it's full body, it might be more like 30 to 45 minutes. It just depends. But this lowers the glycogen levels, not only in my muscles, but also in my liver, which in my liver, it's already low from the fasting, right? You guys know anything about fasting, you know that you start using up the liver glycogen. And as that liver glycogen gets lower, especially past the 12-hour mark, you're using more and more fat for fuel to stabilize blood sugar. You're using more ketones and breaking down more fat. So in a fasted workout, there's more fat and ketones being utilized. Energy needs are high, supply is low. So my body's throwing everything it can on the fire as quickly as possible. And through adaptation, workout to workout to workout over time, this improves those energy pathways, muscle's ability to utilize fatty acids, right? Break them down and put them to work without a lot of, without the dizziness, without, sometimes you start a low carb diet or keto, it's called the keto flu, keto diet, and you have that kind of, where your body's adjusting, trying to figure out how to burn fat more efficiently, can't keep up because it's used to having carbs coming in all the time to stabilize blood sugar, keep blood sugar going up and down. That's what you overcome. That's what you adapt to more efficiently through the fasted workouts. So this is not just about burning fat per se for weight loss. Again, it helps with weight loss, but it's way beyond that. This is about your efficiency, long-term health, just be able to maintain healthy habits, healthy eating habits, so you can reach those weight loss goals, but also maintain it and have improved insulin sensitivity, right? In all tissues, muscle, fat, liver, brain, all the other organs. This is going to improve insulin sensitivity and improve those tissues' ability to burn fat and reduce your reliance on taking in glucose or just eating on so often, eating several times a day, meal snack, not how you want to live. Certainly not good for trying to maintain insulin sensitivity. This is combining the hunger with the hunt, where you got hunger, hunt, feast, right? Find the hunger, the fasting with the hunt, the work, and combining the metabolic stress of fasting with the mechanical stress of intense movement, whatever that is. You're playing a sport, you're sprinting, doing something with some level of intensity, whatever that is. Cortisol and adrenals are upregulated. You know why? Because they help your body release blood sugar. Okay, autophagy is enhanced. You're recycling. You're low in energy. You're going to recycle damaged tissue. You're going to break it down. Yes, protein synthesis or muscle protein synthesis is reduced. Of course, you're in a catabolic state. Again, breaking down old or damaged tissue along with the fat. It's a catabolic state. It's very important. We need that for healing. We need that for long-term health and to burn fat, and losing weight is a catabolic state. We can't stay anabolic or in a growth state all the time. It's really not good for us for the sake of our health. Those that stay in an anabolic state, they're doing so by eating all the time with very little activity, constantly gaining weight. And we know growth, constant growth, not good. That promotes disease. So again, in this state where there's low energy, there's intense activity. Now, low energy, I mean by low glucose or low glycogen available, limited glycogen, blood sugar is normal or low. Yeah. In addition to the adrenals and cortisol spitting out more, or telling your body to spit out more glycogen, glucose, there's also glucagon, which is the sister to insulin in the pancreas. When insulin levels are low, glucagon goes up. It's high, it tells the liver to put out more glucose. So you're losing even more glucose from the liver. It's trying to keep up. It's going to start breaking down more fat as quickly as it can. Lactic acid levels are high. We're fatigued. we're trying to keep up because we cannot release or break down or burn fat as quickly as glucose. We get a lot more energy out of a gram of fat than we do from a gram of glycogen. A lot more energy stored in there, but it's harder to get to. It's harder to break down. We can get a little more efficient at it, but it's never the same. And so it's more work. There's more stress involved in that, and that's why we feel the fatigue. It can't keep up. You're not getting enough. It's enough fuel. So you're pushing through. You have to stop, take a breath for a minute or something, 30 seconds, and then moving on, and just keep pushing up against that fatigue. Our muscles are hungry. Our liver is hungry. Depleted glycogen. Again, insulin levels are low. And it's that metabolic stress. It's increasing the metabolic stress because of the mechanical stress of the workout. So it's elevated. It's going to bring autophagy into play much sooner. Whether that's breaking down mitochondria, damaged proteins, old proteins, cellular tissue, cellular parts, cellular organs, the organelles in the cell, damaged cells with damaged cell membranes, those get broken down. Cells will start to bind together to share resources. And only the cells that can bind together, the only ones that can bind together are the ones with a healthy cellular membrane or cell wall. We don't have walls. Plants have cell walls. We have cell membranes, but the outer layer of the cell, those can join together if they're healthy. If they aren't, they get left out, they get starved out. They can't bind. So those get recycled. And then we get to the feast. The hunger and the hunt combine together. And we get to the feast. It's not actually a feast, but it's when we refeed. And this is when we say, okay, insulin, I'm ready for you. We use insulin to do our bidding, right? This is when it comes to serve us. So my post-workout meal is generally a protein shake. Sometimes it's beef-based. I've used grass-fed whey. I've been using beef-based for a while. Use what's best for you. We use just try to get a higher quality one. For immediate refuel, okay, because a protein shake is going to have a much higher impact on insulin, so much higher insulin levels than a slow digesting whole food protein. If you prefer whole food, great. Use it. Works for you. I'm telling you what I do to get a bigger insulin response. Now, lately, I've been mixing my shake with raw goat's milk and a banana. Yeah. So yeah, it's a whole milk. So yeah, there's some fat in there for sure. Protein, lots of other nutrients that haven't been damaged. The magnesium, calcium haven't been damaged by not just homogenization, but pasteurization, not from the heat. It's raw. So it's nutrition. There's some nutrition in there that I'm after. And obviously raw milk is growth related. It's called we give it to babies for a reason, right? For growth. Teenagers drink it for growth, right? Kids drink it for growth. And then in addition to the banana and the milk and the protein, I also will eat a whole, I'll eat it whole, I should say. I'm not mixing it up or blending it up, but like a half a sweet potato, very small amount of sweet potato. So all in all, it's about 50 to 70 grams of carbs, depending on what it is. I don't really measure much, but banana, small amount of sweet potato, whatever's in the whole milk, right? With an easily digested protein. So yeah, that's causing an insulin response. To deliver these nutrients to the muscles and organs that have been really crying out for it throughout the workout, that have been, hey, bring us everything you got. They're saying, bring us everything you got. Here we go. And so I'm refueling for a quicker recovery and for growth of those muscles because of what I do during most of the day, which I'll get into. What I do most of the time is quite the opposite. How I live most of the day is quite the opposite. But this is when the chemistry switches from catabolic to anabolic in a really big way, stimulating the muscle proteins. So the muscle, the protein being converted into a muscle tissue, right? The growth there, as well as the generation of the new mitochondria after the old ones have been recycled, and tissue that was being recycled, neurons in the brain, regrowth. This stimulates regrowth after a time of stress, the rebuilding after a cleanup. This is a process that used to occur all the time in our bodies when we were growing. But now we have to stimulate it in order to make it happen. Because otherwise, bad habits, age, we're not really growing. So we need to sort of create the environment where things are broken down and replaced. Tissues broken down and replaced. Again, happens all the time when we're growing. Get past 30, not so much. Not so much. No. Not that we don't replace tissue and cells, but if you have damage, let's say those, like an example of the damaged cell membranes. Well, we don't want damaged cell membranes growing and reproducing, do we? We want to get rid of those because damaged cells reproducing can turn into a tumor. Damaged mitochondria don't produce energy so well, do they? So an hour or so after that shake and the sweet potato, half sweet potato, I shift to a whole food meal. It's very high protein and some would say high fat. It's animal-based food. Usually a little liver for the nutrients, for the micronutrients, like 5, 10, like maybe really 2 or 3 ounces. So not much, maybe it's 10 to 15 grams of protein, 4 whole eggs, and then some meat. Might be like 4 or 6 ounces, maybe. I rarely 8 with the eggs and everything else I'd eaten, but in that range. So about 50 to 70 grams of protein, a good amount of fat, depending on the meat I'm eating. No starches really. So again, and it's whole food, so it's slower digesting. Very little stimulation of insulin. If there is a bump from it, it's small and short-lived. There is definitely some protein synthesis, right? Because mTOR will react to the protein, but very little insulin response. I've put insulin back in its place by controlling my blood sugar with my food choices. So it had its time, it came up, it delivered to starving tissue, went down, and now it's like, I got a little bump because I got to digest food with something, right? I'm not scared of it. I'm not worried about it because I know what I'm eating and I know I'm insulin sensitive. And at dinner, my next meal, I'll have at least that much protein, generally fatty meat. I may include some kind of carb of that, which could be a vegetable, could be like kimchi. I tend to eat fermented veggies, ideally, if I'm going to have them. But definitely the whole food protein is the priority. It's what I focus my attention on consuming. Okay. So, and if there's some other carb in there, it's for enjoyment. But it's a small portion. Most of what I eat is the whole food protein. That's the majority of what I take in. And again, I'm not trying to lose weight, but if you were, you would still prioritize the protein and leave out the carb. But I'm not scared of a little bit of carb, like starchy carbs that might stimulate a little bit of insulin. I'm not eating a lot of it. I'm not eating pizzas. Okay, having a little on the side. Sometimes, as I choose to, because I can. Right. Now, if I do sprints instead of the weight training, I'll often have the shake as well. Sometimes it's just the eggs and meat. I go right to the eggs and meat meal. It depends on the time of day when I get to it. But I definitely, treat the sprint because that's a high intensity exercise. I'm usually doing it fasted. I want the recovery so I can work out the next day. It's usually if I don't do the sprints shortly after maybe a lighter weight training workout, that I'm doing it by itself, that means I'm weight training on the other days. So it's important for me to refuel and recover because I want the adaptive benefits. I want to get that regeneration of tissue. Okay. Now, on days I don't work out, I just eat that lunch. I don't have the shake. I don't have the potato. Black coffee is my breakfast generally. Head out the door, and it's just that same lunch. It's the liver, the eggs, and the meat. Dinner is very similar. Once a week, I fast dinner to dinner just to keep my metabolic flexibility primed to do that kind of a 22, 24 hour, how it works, fast. And I wouldn't work out much that day. I wouldn't do anything intense. It'd be lighter. It'd be like a walk or some yoga or stretching, that kind of thing. But it's not, anything intense on those days usually. And that's essentially it. I mean, I use the insulin for recovery and growth after the period of metabolic and mechanical stress, and then I shut it down. And I'm not saying this is the best way to eat post-workout. It's just what I do, and it serves me, because if I eat completely no carb, like if I went total keto, or when I've done that, or carnivore, I lose way too much weight. Two, I often get very dehydrated from the lack of electrolytes, the magnesium, the potassium, and I drink ReLyte for those fasting days, and it's great. I have ReLyte every day for the electrolytes in there from Real Salt out of Utah. There, great stuff. I mean, I totally recommend it. But to go weeks at a time in keto or low or carnivore, I'm going to start cramping. I'm going to notice I'm not getting enough electrolytes. My stress level gets way too high. With a combination of my fasting, the workouts, and no carb, it has a negative effect on my sleep. I'm just too much stress, too much stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system, not enough parasympathetic for me. Some of you can handle it. Or if you're eating more often, if you're eating 3 or 4 meals a day instead of intermittent fasting and trying to get primarily 2 meals, then okay, yeah, maybe that works better for you. But personally, I can't do it. And I know people who, when they've gone carnivore or really keto, low carb, it throws off their heart rhythm, and that's a potassium magnesium thing. It's electrolyte thing. It changes the electrical pathways in there, so it throws off their rhythm. You might get some arrhythmia from that. Not everybody. That's more rare, but it's a factor. It's something to consider when you're making decisions about your diet, about what your food's going to be. Whether you want to include some fruit or some avocado or something like that has that potassium and magnesium in there, that you just don't get a lot of, honestly, in animal-based foods. Those minerals are one of the few things that are on the low end in a purely, in a purely meat-based diet. But if it works for you, and the thing is, the more weight you have to lose, the more excess fat you have in your body, the more excess fat you can burn or release in a day. I'm pretty lean. The leaner you get, the less fat your body will allow you to release out of preservation. It just won't. Now your energy levels might go up, just like we're adapted. If we are, let's say you're in a state where you're living off the land, okay, hunter-gatherer style. You haven't eaten for 30 hours. Your body's going to ramp up that cortisol and the adrenals to give you the energy to go make sure you find some food so you don't die, right? So you don't starve to death. It's going to ramp up for a couple of days. That's going to go up. That means it's going to release more fat. It's going to release more whatever stored glycogen might start breaking down protein, okay, over that 2 or 3 days for fuel. That's survival. We're talking about 16, 14, 15, 16 hours. You're not going to be breaking down that much protein at all. You're going to be recycling it, but you're not using muscle for fuel because you're starving because you haven't eaten for 15 hours. That's just not a big deal. 24 hours should be a pretty typical thing to do. If you did that if you're really trying to lose weight, 2 or 3 24-hour fasts a week, and then do intermittent fasting on the other days, eating adequate protein, that's a great way to go for weight loss and for maintaining insulin sensitivity. Include some fruit, or include the veggies that you can digest that give you the magnesium and potassium, prioritizing a large amount of fatty meat. Great way to go. I know I'm down a bunny trail here, but if you're at that place, this is not for you. Stay where you are with what you're doing. Bring enough balance that you can sustain it. It needs to be sustainable. I think that's my point. Making it sustainable, bringing fasting insulin numbers down, bringing your blood sugar back to normal most of the time, losing the weight you need to lose. Then you can start playing with this. Then you can start being creative and taking a little more control and manipulating how the hormones affect your body, right? If this resonates with you, try it. See how you like it. My point is we don't need to fear insulin. If yours is out of control, again, attack it. That should be your first priority, is bring fasting insulin levels in the single digits, like below 8 or below 5 even, before you start trying something like this. Insulin is supposed to operate to our benefit in a healthy environment. In the insulin sensitive, active body, it works to our benefit. If it's out of control in your body, man, yes, again, I can't say it enough. Get it under control. Do what you got to do to get that under control and lose whatever fat you need to lose to make that more stable. Those things affect each other. But we need to better understand insulin and how it works and use it for our particular needs. And that is really my point. We use it when we need it, and then we're done with it. We can send it away. Have a great week.